Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Warehouse. I'm your host, Josh Johnson, and like always, we are joined by an incredibly special guest. Today, we have joining us photographer extraordinaire, in my opinion, Mickey Adair. Hey, Mickey, how you doing? And thanks for joining us.
I'm well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Mickey, I have a specific thing that I want to start this conversation off with you. You are a professional photographer and an artist. And so there's function and there's artistry. In your own view of yourself, do you see yourself as a craftsman or an artist?
Craftsman.
A craftsman. Is it because you believe deeply in the functionality and not the art, or is it just because you do it for profit?
No, I like the art, but I look at my work more like a photojournalist, a documentarian.
Sure.
Because on my portfolio work, you don't find any styling or basically it's just people looking right into the camera.
I hear you.
And I'm documenting them. And my intention is for hundreds of years from now for people to know exactly what they look like. Every wrinkle, every pore, every broken blood vessel in their eyes, and the weave of their clothes, and to present themselves just the way they decided to present themselves to the world that day. I don't change anything about them.
I love that perspective because, like in writing, for example, there are some writers who look at it as a skill or a tool, and there are some writers who look at it as a poetry or an art. And to hear that in photography, the nuances can exist in that same way within technique, because, you know, it takes technique to do them both. But your technique is a technique of function, and I love that. Kind of piggybacking on that, as a photographer, as we're going to talk about through this spot, who has shot some of the most prominent people to have ever walked the face of the planet Earth, a photographer to the stars, I guess you could say. But piggybacking on that last question, as a photographer, do you still do it for fun? Will you carry your camera to the park on a weekend? No.
I'm constantly asked, where's your camera? And now that everybody's got a cell phone, I say, where's yours? Like, people think I've got a shelf of springtime Tallahassee every year going back to 1979.
And that's just not the way that works.
A lot of people call it photo ops. And I'm thinking, what, pictures of people eating cotton candy? No. Go ahead. You feel free to do it yourself.
I've had some chefs on the spot, and they talk about food that way. You know, they spend their life in that decoration, and so they don't really cook for themselves at home. They would much rather somebody else cook for them. That's hilarious to me. You brought up cell phones, which was something that I thought we were going to touch on deeper in the spot. But since you brought it up, I want to talk about it now. Is technology hurting your field because it's so accessible, or is it helping your field because it's so accessible?
Well, some of both, but my feeling is that it's basically killed my industry. For example, I heard an archivist from like the Smithsonian or Library of Congress somewhere talk about how the number of images that are captured today is orders of magnitude more than at any other time. But the number of submissions to the archives drops precipitously. And you can see it. People will just load their cell phone up with images and then they lose their phone or get a new phone.
Sure. Before we get into what everybody wants to know from Mickey Adair, how did you get into photography? What was it about it? How did you get into it?
Well, when I was 19, I went out to the Los Angeles area, stayed with my grandparents, and he was a charter member of Actors Equity, and he had a long history of acting on Broadway and in movies, and I thought he might be able to help me see if the motion picture industry was something that I didn't know. And I took a class at Pasadena City College, a phenomenal place. in Introduction to Photography. And it was so all-inclusive that by the time that semester was over, I figured I was ready to build my own darkroom and studio, and the information that the Kodak company put out was voluminous about all their products and services. And we had Ansel Adams to teach us how to expose film and develop it and how to make prints. And
You mean he taught you directly, Ansel
no,
Adams? Oh, okay. You just mean I got you.
he taught the world.
He taught the world. You're right about that. And that teaching has spooled out into just an incredible career for you from our perspective. I don't know this to be true. I'm going to take a little bit of artistic license as a raconteur and say, in terms of our local photographers, maybe outside of Mark Wallheiser, you may be the most prominent Getty artist that Tallahassee has. And if that's not true, you've got a lot of images. You have shot, like I said earlier, just some of the most prominent people on planet Earth. Talk to me about that. And I want to start with my favorite person of all time, who is somebody that's sat in your chair, Muhammad Ali. How did that come about?
Oh, it's too complicated to tell much of the story, except that he was all over town, and the guy who was his escort, a local minister, said that I made a proposal that I would cover events with 35 millimeter camera as much as I could, and for an opportunity to set up my portable studio between two stops. And so everywhere he went, there was mobs of people, and children climbed all over him like a piece of playground equipment. And young men wanted to get into slapface with him, and he'd get into it with them. In fact, in my portrait, he's got a little bead of sweat running down the side of his. So it was at the FSU ballroom where there, on 2/3 of it was set up for a luncheon, and I was set up in the other one. And so they came out and they started to walk by, and I said, no. This is it. You promised. And so believe it or not, I walked over and grabbed him by the lapels and positioned him over my posing stool and sat him down. And he's the calmest person I've ever been around until he's provoked.
Sure.
And he's easily provoked. But he just sat there gently while this minister, who was his escort, was screaming at me, "We don't have time for this." And I'm operating both ends of this camera, and my head's under a black cloth. The focus that I'm looking at is upside down and backwards. I need the subject to hold perfectly still, and he was the perfect subject. And so I had less than a minute with him. I got two frames of him. He looks identical in them. And there's like couple hundred people all around. In fact, they're blocking my lights and whatnot. And I scream, "Get out of my picture!" And this FSU cop is pushing the crowd out. And see, he was partially blocking one of my lights. You can see his shadow in the background, but in the dark room, I'm able to blend it out. And I, ever since then, have regretted not letting those people be the backdrop behind him. And you'd see them from the chest down.
Sure.
And that would have improved it dramatically. Later, I photographed a poet laureate that way, and my mother and her sister. We lined all the cousins up behind them.
You brought up regret in that last answer. As an artist, whether a functional artist or a spiritual artist or a social artist, an artist nonetheless.
See, that's where I wasn't an artist.
I hear you, but still operating in your art form. I've heard other artists say that a piece is never finished, even if it looks perfect to the world. They can always see something in it that they regret. Do you have those same expectations?
Every single one. Because so many of the opportunities I had with these people were so fleeting. Yeah. And there's so often somebody standing next to me saying, "Mickey, hurry up." And I'm using both sides of my brain when I'm doing this. And I describe it as like doing a really intricate Etch-a-Sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody says, "Hurry up," it's like taking that Etch-a-Sketch and just shaking it. And because then I have to go around to the other end of the camera, open up the lens, cock the shutter, get back, focus. And the nice thing about these celebrities and these famous people is there's no young people in my portfolio, and they've long since come to terms with what they look like, and they bring no anxieties with them, and they're almost all of them are made here in town,
Mm-hmm.
and they're here for a reason. They're either going to perform or read from their own books and sign them, and sell them, and plus they're getting a fat paycheck, and they're anticipating cameras and photographers.
Yeah.
So I just tell them to first of all, I like to get my lighting set up, and then ask somebody in the area, just a waiter, a server, a janitor, anybody, just come have a seat and let me move some lights around and squeeze off. Well, that's a bad term. Make a couple of exposures. These are 4x5-inch negatives, and anticipating how I'm going to process the film in the darkroom later to see if I need to develop it longer or less. And then when the person drops by, I ask them just to have a seat, relax, breathe, and look right in the camera and just look like yourself.
As a short answer, do you remember who your first big portrait or celebrity portrait was?
I know my first one is the most meaningful one to me is Reverend C.K. Steele.
Yeah.
I grew up here in town, and I knew that periodically the board of the SCLC came here for their periodic board meetings, and he was a co-founder of the SCLC with Reverend Martin Luther King,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the vice president. So all of the board members are preachers, and they would hold their meetings at each other's churches. And I'm offered a free portrait when I figured I was finally getting to get together in my studio. I invited the mayor, Ben Thompson, to come and bring his family for a free portrait. It worked out. I figured now I got something I can hang on the wall and let people think he paid me. And about that time, then it was in the paper, the SCLC was coming to town, and I thought, forget the mayor of Tallahassee. So I went right over to Reverend Steele, and I'd met him before, and that's when I learned he was dying of bone cancer, and that he was really endorsed the idea of making a formal portrait. And so the situation was complicated, but it came off, and I consider him my muse.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody who has anything to do with civil rights would come to town and would make a beeline to see Reverend Steele. And that they came to his funeral, too. I had numerous opportunities to make portraits of these people that you hear about in history.
That's a perfect segue because just as a side note, as I was doing research on you, a lot of where I got it from was your website, availablelightphotography.com. And I noticed in my own personhood that you had the complete square of Dr. King's closest allies. You had his wife, Coretta Scott King, who had posed for a photo. You had Andrew Young, who had posed for a photo, and you had Ralph Abernathy, who had posed for one of your photos. And for some reason, I started bubbling with emotion, not only just seeing these people, but knowing that they had all been in town and that I was getting ready to talk to somebody who had smelled all of their cologne and their perfume. Does the weight of taking photos of people like Rosa Parks, for example, who is another person that you have taken photos for, the mother of the civil rights movement, does the weight of the people that you're taking these photos of ever resonate with you outside of just the function of shooting behind the camera?
Only in looking back. At the time, I'm too busy with all the equipment that I've hauled and set up, and knowing the multitude of things that I could do wrong. Like I've messed up on some of them because all the adjustments on the camera you have to do. And so plus somebody's always yelling at me, hurry up. And if I was going to pursue them anymore, I would tell the person who's escorting them in advance, first of all, do not tell me to hurry up. Tell me how much time you have, and then however much time they allow me, that's how much time it'll take.
I heard that.
And it's usually only a couple of minutes.
Let me ask you a personal question. I know how we see you. I mean, just some of the names that I've rattled off here, I'm sure the audience is saying, what manner of photographer has been able to glean photos of all of these people? But this one is more introspective, a question for you, because we do see you as a pioneer, whether it's a portraiture or a photographer. Do you ever see yourself as a pioneer? Do you ever see yourself in that vein?
No way. All of these people have been had fine portrait photographers make their photos. The role model that I have in Tallahassee was Richard Parks. He was the best portrait photographer this town ever saw or will see. And I met him shortly before he passed. And I thought, and I'd just gotten back from California and was looking to how to grow my abilities that's back when there was camera stores all over town, had all kinds of materials and supplies and services. They're all just about all gone now. And I thought, I got to latch on to this guy. I'll sweep his floors. I'll do whatever he wants. And he died shortly after that. But I can see his work from across the room and immediately know it's his. Out of a whole wall full of photos, his shadow detail is exquisite. His highlight detail is perfect. And his midtones just glisten. Mm-hmm. They glow. And so he did Ansel Adams exactly right. And in my case, it was always under time constraints and still learning how to do the darkroom work. And so my stuff doesn't look technically anywhere near as good as his. And I can refer you to one that's at the TSC Art Gallery, the Ralph Hearst Gallery that has all the sculptures. Mm-hmm. The portrait that he made of Ralph Hearst at the entrance is a masterclass in black and white film portraiture and lighting. Mm. It's just perfect.
Lovely anecdote. That's a perfect segue to something else that I wanted to ask you. I kind of brought up technology in a prior question. The elephant in the room with technology in any art medium is artificial intelligence. There's a school of thought that says it's a necessary tool. There's a school of thought that says it should be available to the masses. And there's a school of thought that says, let's shun it like Pandora's box because we know what happens when we open it. Do you fall in either of those schools when it comes to artificial intelligence?
I would anticipate that people would monkey around with my work in the future, past my lifetime. I've got no control over that. But I don't employ it in any way.
Sure.
I don't allow it to describe my work. I'm constantly having to catch it. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they want to get you out into social media, which I'm not an Insta kind of anything guy. But I know it's important. I got to learn how to do that better. So again, I don't employ it. I don't I understand how useful it can be. I mean, in science and medicine and just on and on. I mean, sending spaceships to Mars.
Sure.
Yeah.
While, and I mean this is no insult, while you are still a young enough man, you are seasoned enough where you can start seeing your life and your artistry on top of the hill. And you brought up in that last answer that people will fool around and monkey around with your work after you're dead. Has your art in any way served as a posterity? Do you hope that it inspires some other young portrait artist, or do you care that your pieces go to good homes? Has it been in a way to be your own legacy?
Yeah, that's why I do it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you answered that
That
way.
I want people to see that the master photographers of old, there's somebody still interested in following in their footsteps and learning from them. And that you say posterity, like I say, I want people to be able to look into Rosa Parks' eyes and have her look into theirs and see how she chose to get dressed that day and
Absolutely.
wear her hair.
In that way, you are a historian or an archivist. Absolutely. My last question to you is: you have another photo of another very prominent person in BB King, and BB King is known for many different songs, but his biggest one is probably "The Thrill Is Gone." My question for you is: after all these years, is the thrill in your artistry gone, or do you still hunger and thirst for it every day?
I hunger and thirst very little. I've only got a few. I am contemplating some actual artistic endeavors. I have never considered myself an artist. I was just a documentarian, but you have to refer to the work as artwork constantly. So people are quick to associate me with being an artist. I mean, if you look on that portfolio, you don't see any inspiration. You just see somebody documenting exactly how somebody looks. But I have dabbled, and I've got a couple projects in mind.
In closing, I will say to you, and it's not like my opinion matters when I'm talking to one of the masters of his craft, but in that last answer, you brought up the word artistry, you brought up the word documentation, and you brought up the word inspiration. For what it's worth, the way that you have documented your artistry in this conversation with us today has been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure it's been an inspiration to people at home. And so I thank you for coming, and I thank you all for joining us for another episode of The Warehouse. See you next time. Bye-bye.